Aston Martin were the 7th best team last year, and now in 2023 it looks like they have leapfrogged both Mercedes and Ferrari to be the 2nd best team, with some help from a certain Alonso. Fernando Alonso. A little James Bond joke there for you early doors. Anyway, at the first Grand Prix of the season, Alonso bagged the team a very well-deserved 3rd place. I do think James Bond would have likely won though. The team's last podium was at Baku in 2021 when Verstappen had his huge tyre blowout on the straight and Hamilton had his brake issue that sent him flying off at the first corner during the restart. Vettel got some luck that day, but the car was already running well at that point. This is a completely different situation though. Alonso didn't rely on other teams having an issue to get his podium. He got it on merit and with outright pace, having overtaken both Mercedes and then Carlos Sainz later in the race, even after having a poor start. Aston Martin have a really quick car. In 2022, the first year of brand new regulations, the highest placed Aston Martin car after qualifying for the first race at Bahrain was Nico Hülkenberg, and he qualified in P17. He was filling in for Sebastian Vettel for the first 2 races, who was unwell. Knocked out in Q1, Nico was 1.3 seconds off the fastest time in Q1 set by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Lance Stroll would go on to be the leading Aston Martin car in the race though, finishing P12. Fast forward a year and not only did the fastest Aston Martin this time around end up qualifying in 5th place, 12 places higher than the year before, they were also only 6/10 off pole position. That gap could likely be reduced even further if we factor in that Red Bull had 2 runs at a qualifying lap and Aston Martin only 1. They then went on to gain positions in the race, finishing in P3 with Fernando Alonso. Aston Martin gained a significant amount of time over the winter, and owner Lawrence Stroll isn't going to rest until the team are fighting for championships. But how have we got to this point? Where did it all come from? How do you go from being the 7th fastest car to being on the podium? Well, before we get into that, let's just talk about how the Aston Martin team came to be. As with any F1 team, the history is quite a long one, and the team has changed hands many times. The origins can actually be traced back all the way to Jordan Grand Prix, being ran and owned by Eddie Jordan, before the team was sold to the Midland Group and rebranded as Midland F1 in 2006. You could say it was an unsuccessful time for the team, and not long after that, the team was sold to Spyker Cars, a Dutch car brand. Sadly, the results weren't much better, and the team was sold to an Indian businessman, Vijay Mallya. Mr. Mallya had his own troubled history with various legal battles, but the team would become known as Force India in 2008, and would stay that way all the way until during the 2018 season, when the team was put into administration, as a result of Mr. Mallya being a little naughty boy. Don't worry though, because Lawrence Stroll came to the rescue, sort of a Canadian Superman, leading a consortium of investors to purchase the Force India assets. The team would then become Racing Point for the following year. Then, because he has his fingers in many pies, Lawrence Stroll acquired a 16.7% stake in Aston Martin, and this resulted in the team being rebranded as Aston Martin for the 2021 season. Before Aston Martin became their own team, you may have seen their branding on another team though, Red Bull. The companies have always had a close relationship, having formed an innovation partnership many years ago, and in 2018 Aston Martin became the title sponsor of Red Bull. Of course that stopped when Aston Martin became their own team. There is still a really good working relationship between the companies as they continue to collaborate on the Valkyrie hypercar project. So that's how Aston Martin came to be, but it's not really the entire story, because it's still very much a work in progress. There is a huge overhaul going on at Aston Martin, from the factory all the way down to the personnel. In 2001, Martin Whitmarsh was recruited as the CEO of Aston Martin Performance Technologies, and with Whitmarsh having previously spent 25 years with McLaren before leaving them in 2014, he brings with him an awful lot of experience. Arguably the biggest addition to their team though is Dan Fallows, the new technical director, having moved across from Red Bull, and he has most certainly brought with him a wealth of knowledge, having worked with the aero guru Adrian Newey. They've also been recruiting from other teams such as Eric Blandin from Mercedes and Luca Fabato from Alfa Romeo, and that's not even including their star addition, Fernando Alonso from Alpine. When Lawrence Stroll took over the Aston Martin team, they had just under 400 employees. That number is now close to 800, That should tell you how serious he is. There has also been a huge investment in facilities. For some time now, Aston Martin have been building a state-of-the-art factory, something which Lawrence Stroll said doesn't exist in Formula 1 currently. It just doesn't compare to anything any other team has, and will be the first ever smart factory in Formula 1. This facility is reported to be costing in the region of 240 million. And the crazy thing is, the team don't even expect to see the effect of this facility on their car until next year, because they're not even using it yet. The entire building won't be complete until 2024, but they expect to be using part of it later this year. Their current facility is largely the same one that the Jordan F1 team I mentioned earlier was using 30 years ago. Of course, that building's been updated and improved over the years, but it's not something that a modern company would build today. One thing this new facility will allow for is for all departments to be housed in one single area, in theory making working much easier and simplified between the departments. It will also include a state-of-the-art simulator and, for the first time, their own wind tunnel. More on that in a second. Aston Martin have been really clever in how they've gone about things. They are a customer team of Mercedes buying their engines, gearboxes, and even their rear suspension off the Brackley-based team. This is allowed under the rules, but it doesn't stop there. Aston Martin are currently using the Mercedes wind tunnel until their new wind tunnel has finished construction, making their recent upturn in status even more impressive and slightly more embarrassing for Mercedes. A customer team who use their engines, suspension, and their wind tunnel simply making a better car than a manufacturer. That's got to sting. It may seem like Aston Martin have come out of nowhere to leapfrog other teams, but they have been quietly building the stepping stones now for quite a few years, really since Lawrence Stroll took over the team. They've been building the right workforce, the right environment, literally, to take them to the top. And if you listen to Lawrence Stroll, he isn't going to stop until they are the best team in Formula 1. Although, Red Bull might have a few things to say about that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. And why not check out a few of these other videos while you're there. Until next time.